Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour UFC on Fox 15. Sweet name. I can't figure out these things. I can't tell them apart. What's what, Cody Saftik? You tell me.
We've got pay-per-views, you've got fight nights, you've got on Fox, you've got FX, you've got Ultimate Fighter finales, but I think it was a weird stat. It was something like UFC 100 was actually like their 200th and 11th event or something. Like, they are currently way past the numbers, so don't pay too much into it. This is their 15th time on Fox.
They need to come up with something branded, something else, rather than UFC on Fox.
Well, then they'd go Fight Night, then they'd go FX, then they had On Fuel, and then it's just like, it gets a little bit much to say the least. And then because Fox has a deal with them, so they want premium cards. So it's like, okay, well, we'll have our Fight Nights, which, like the Krakow card, it's like, oh, okay, we won't put all our star power. On the Fox cards, it is always star-studded, and that's exactly what we're seeing here.
All right, before we get to UFC on Fox 15, I need to let everyone know, I don't know much about the old UFC, but I do know about daily fantasy, and that's what we're talking about here. DraftKings and Kountermove, the daily picks a week, and I've noticed a lot of just bizarre pricing between the sites and compared those to the odds. So we'll get your breakdown of each of them, and we must inform the people that I don't know how to pronounce anyone's names. So every time that I say someone's name incorrectly, this sound shall play. And I did do better on the Krakow card, shockingly.
Surprisingly.
Only two wrong. I'm now 36 for 91 in names. My mispronunciation counter is now down to 40% from 44%. I saw some repeat names, but I did a quick skim here, so I should be okay.
All right, well, let's get started.
I'm banking on less than 7 names pronounced incorrectly.
Less than 7 names. Okay. There's some easy ones here.
All right, so unlike most UFC shows, I'm not starting with the main event. I'm starting with 5 fights that DraftKings has as one favorite, Kountermove has as the other, and the biggest one, I'm going to get this name wrong, ALJAMAIN Sterling.
Yeah, got it. ALJAMAIN Sterling.
Versus Takeya Mizugaki.
You would have had it had you committed to the last
I
name.
didn't. I didn't even really look at it all that much.
Takeya Mizugaki.
All right, so I got that one wrong. Anyway, so Sterling is a minus 300 favorite betting-wise. He's 10,900 on DraftKings, yet on Kountermove, he's 4,700. Where Tiak, what was his name again? Takeya, 4,900. What's up with this?
Well, first of all, that's not the only fight. There is a
There's
lot
5
of
them.
discrepancies.
There's 5 fights.
A lot. Weird ones, too. With ALJAMAIN Sterling, this is a young kid who is very, very hot prospect. He's comes out of the same gym as the current middleweight champion, Chris Weidman. He trains with Matt Serra, the guy who beat George St. Pierre, as I'm sure even you know, with a good, solid gym. And this is a kid that they're very, very high on. The only knock on him is he's only had 2 fights in the UFC. He is 2-0. In his first fight against Cody Gibson, he fought a big 135er he beat Cody Gibson. But Cody Gibson really showed that physicality might be a tad problem for him. His next fight, he knocks out Hugo Vienna. He looks good. So the mark here would be, okay, well, if you want ALJAMAIN Sterling, if you're willing to pay that cost on DraftKings, you need him to get a finish. Takeya Mizugaki got finished in his last fight in the first round. But this is a guy who is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. He's fought for a WEC world title. He's fought the best guys in the UFC. He's kind of known, to me anyways, as a bit of a gatekeeper. The guy that can give up-and-comers a rough time. And, well, ALJAMAIN Sterling's an up-and-comer. So I think Sterling gets the win, but is he going to blow him out and get that first-round finish? I don't really see it.
So, but for $4,700 on Kountermove, that sounds like a pretty good pick.
I
on
agree.
DraftKings, that sounds terrible.
It does, but when you're configuring your teams, you'll notice DraftKings, it is very, very difficult to get all the guys that you want in the same bill. Kountermove, you can have all of them. You can literally have all the good guys that you want.
All right, so more discrepancies. Cub Swanson is 10,300 on DraftKings, only 4,500 on Kountermove. He's taking on Max Holloway, 9,100 on DraftKings. 5,100 on Kountermove, and the odds in this fight have Swanson as a minus 160 favorite, so it seems like DraftKings and the odds have all been on the same page, whereas Kountermove has a lot of these favorites as massive underdogs. So what's going on?
It's very weird because this is another fight. It's like, okay, Cub Swanson, this is a guy that's been around. A lot of people like Cub Swanson, and his fighting style should generate a lot of points here. For $4,500 on Kountermove, sign me up. I played this guy all day long on Kountermove. He's a must-have. Now on DraftKings, it's like, okay, well, for the type of money that you have to pay to get him, he needs to get that finish. Is he going to finish Max Holloway? I don't think so. Max Holloway, a guy that's gone 3 rounds against Conor McGregor, a guy that's fought good level of competition, and man, does he ever have a good chin on him. Good chin, pretty good submission game. I don't see Cub Swanson necessarily finishing him. For $4,500, I'll take that chance because there's a possibility he finishes him, but also he'll win the fight more than likely. He'll land significant strikes. He might get a couple takedowns. he'll score points. But for the amount of money that you got to pay for him on DraftKings, it's not
for
really
his price,
worth
you need
it.
a quick finish.
You need a quick finish. Max Holloway, on the flip side, he's a lot cheaper on DraftKings.
Yeah, you can actually build kind of around him as a three-fight guy.
Exactly, you can
Three-round
slot
guy,
in a little bit. I totally did see that.
All right, so women's fight, Paige VanZant, no relation to Gus Van Sant, the director.
It's Zant.
Oh,
You're saying it
Zant.
with a bit of an S. Paige VanZant.
Oh, Paige VanZant with a capital Z.
Yeah, her nickname, Paige 12 Gauge VanZant.
When you have a Z in your last name, you don't really need a nickname.
Zed if you're in Canada.
Or
but
if you're in Canada. See, it sounds better as Z, though. Like, why don't
It
they just call her
does.
Lord
It's
Z?
It's not ZZ top. You know, I get the whole JZ. Like, I feel you. But yeah, Paige VanZant, they're not pronouncing it as an S. It is a Z.
She's a minus 160 favorite, but she's only $4,600 on Kountermove going against Felice Herrig. 9,300 on DraftKings, 5,000. Like, Kountermove thinks Herrig is awesome, by the way.
You've been talking to a couple people around the office, too, and they keep saying the same thing. Well, who do you got in this fight? Paige VanZant or Felice Herrig? Felice Herrig. Well, why? I guess the experience. But do you have any real reason why? The experience. That seems to all be. Paige VanZant's 21 years old. She's 4-1, so she only has 5 pro MMA fights, and she's 21.
Yeah, but the last
she's a mega babe.
I don't think really. She's a mega babe.
Oh, mega babe.
I like that.
Actual, like, I'm saying 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Like, this girl's gorgeous.
Well, I hope she wins and doesn't get punched in the face too much.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I expect her to get the win. The only thing is for $5,000 on Kountermove, once again, it's like, okay, well, I need her to finish Felice Herrig, and maybe that experience.
No, she's only $4,600 on Kountermove.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, Paige VanZant is a girl that, if the value is correct, I could like it. But the only problem is on Kountermove, you can get good, strong finishers. And I'm not saying Paige VanZant's not a finisher. She actually got a finish in her last fight, her UFC debut. But I think it's going to be a little harder to put Felice Herrig away. This fight could easily go the 3 rounds. And even though they're women strawweights, they're going to throw a number of strikes. Women typically do score well on these types of daily fantasy systems. I don't really think that she's going to score as much as she possibly could. So I'm kind of avoiding this one both ways.
Do you think it's a decision fight, though?
I really do. If anybody's going to finish anybody here, I think it's Paige VanZant that's going to get the finish. She's never been stopped in her career. But Felice Herrig, someone who has also been around a long time, she won her UFC debut despite coming up short on the Ultimate Fighter show. And quite cute as well. Not a mega babe, but also quite cute. So that is really the real reason why this fight is on the main card of the UFC on Fox 15. It's because 2 babes.
I like it.
It's possible that in the heat of the moment, as they're swinging, as they're elbowing, that they start making out. And I think that's the real draw here. I'm just kidding. But it should be a fun fight either way, but there's better fights on the undercard for sure.
You mentioned that it's difficult to fill out a team on DraftKings, and we've just talked about 2 fights with Max Holloway and Herrig are both undervalued in terms of their pricing. If they can go the distance, they might be 2 guys to throw on your roster.
Yeah, definitely, especially because, and we'll get to this in a bit, but the highest scoring player, Jacare Souza, he's a guy that's expected to get that first-round finish. So a lot of teams will be flocking to get Jacare Souza on DraftKings. At the very least, get him on DraftKings. Only $5,400 on Kountermove. Still very expensive, but we saw Gareth McClellan last week at $5,400. So I mean, that a little $5,500. So that a little surprising to me. If you're going to get the highest paid guy, then you need a cast of good players that'll score you points that are cheap. The Max Holloways of the world, those are there. The Takeo Mizugaki of the world, for $8,500 on DraftKings, it's like, listen, I don't think he's going to beat ALJAMAIN Sterling.
But he's not going to get knocked out either.
He could get knocked out. It is a possibility. This is MMA. But Takeo Mizugaki has fought in all the best guys in the world. He could stifle him. He could put him up against the cage. He could get some takedowns. He could land. And yes, he could definitely make that 3 rounds. Even if he loses, I think he scores enough points, that for $8,500, I see some value there.
So the Sues, as I'm going to call him.
The Sues.
I probably no relation to Steven Souza, the Tampa Bay Rays. But either way, almost $12,000 on DraftKings. But you do think that he is a must. He's a minus 1,400 favorite. That's ridiculous.
You know what? And you know me.
Like, why even have this fight?
Yeah, I love gambling odds. I really, really, really do. And you do not see minus 1,400 very often. But the reason why this fight is minus 1,400 is Jacare was supposed to initially fight a guy by the name of Yoel Romero, who's an Olympic silver medalist, was absolutely a fantastic middleweight, and a fantastic wrestler, fighter all around. That was supposed to be a very good fight. Possibly winner of that fights for a title. Yoel Romero got hurt last week. So they basically asked the entire UFC roster.
And no one wanted to fight him.
Nobody wants to fight him. So they went outside of the UFC and they picked up Chris Camozzi. Now he's got a couple things going for him here. Chris Camozzi used to fight in the UFC, and then he got cut because he was losing fights, mostly because he gets taken to the ground. So they call him. Maybe he contacts them and says, you know what? I'll fight Jacare Souza. So de facto, we don't have anybody to fight him. You're the guy. Oh, wait. Chris Camozzi's already fought Jacare Souza before. Fought him 2 years ago and got choked out in the very first round. So it's a rematch that people didn't really want to see anyways. But the fact is, Chris Camozzi is a ballsy fighter. He's the only guy that was willing to step up to the plate, but I don't expect the outcome to change very much here. Probably a first-round finish for Jacare.
So Countermove and DraftKings has to be on the team as your anchor, as your most expensive player?
You know what? This is the first time I've really done this, but I've tried to maneuver 2 teams for my DraftKings. On Countermove, you can have Jacare all day long. You can have Jacare, and you can have all the rest of the good guys you want. That's a real thing I've noticed about Countermove is
they allow you to take who you want.
You can basically have who you want.
If you have a good sense of who's going to win some of these closer fights, you can really dominate.
If there was a top 6 people that I wanted on my team, I can get 5 of them on my Countermove
That's
team.
not bad.
I can get maybe 2 of them on my DraftKings team. So initially, I made my first team with Jacare. Now I don't have a whole lot of money left. So it's like, how can I build around Jacare? For my second team, I passed on Jacare and see if I could get more, like, better guys, more of them into my lineup, as opposed to taking some dogs in the back end because I have to.
Okay, I can get behind that. That makes a lot of sense. Let's go back to these favorites and just how it's kind of weird. Jim Miller versus Beneil Dariush.
Dariush.
See, I actually added
because you had that one before.
But it was spelled wrong on my page, though.
Oh.
There was no I in it, so no wonder I pronounced it incorrectly.
Yeah. Director Arap screwed you that time.
He did. So Jim Miller is $8,700 on DraftKings and $4,900 on Countermove. Dariush, $1,070 on DraftKings, but only $4,400 on Countermove. Now, he is the favorite at -175. It's a pretty significant favorite for a fight.
Oh, yes.
So it seems like he has to be an absolute must-have for Countermove.
Yeah, absolute must-have on Countermove.
Like, is he a must-have for DraftKings too, even at his price?
I took him. I took him on both of my DraftKings team. As I said, I tried to make 2 lineups, and I took Beneil Dariush on both. Little expensive. I completely agree with that, at least on DraftKings. He is cheap on Countermove.
He's one of the cheapest players on Countermove.
Very weird, very weird. But he's a guy that I believe a must-have. He's got good striking. He's got a good ground game. He's young. He's an up-and-comer. He trains at a great gym. He's really got everything going for him. Jim Miller, very rugged, very tough guy.
Oh, he's rugged.
Oh, yeah.
He's a man's man.
I've got a beard like this beard. No, I'm just kidding. Better beard than this beard. But a guy that's been around for a very long time. He's very, I don't want to say marketable, but you know him. If you're an MMA fan and you watch UFC, you see Jim Miller and you say, oh, Jim Miller's fighting tonight. He's fighting tonight. But he's been around the game for so long. He's only in his early 30s, but he's breaking down a little bit. He's been in some wars. He's not quite as quick as he used to be. He owns his own gym. His brother's got a very sick kid that they take care of. There's more going on in this guy's life outside of the cage than going inside of the cage.
Okay.
Beneil Dariush, young kid on his way up. I expect him to get that finish. Now, with Jim Miller is got good value on DraftKings. So if you didn't have Beneil Dariush on your DraftKings team and you needed a cheap player, maybe Jim Miller's that guy.
He's worth a flyer?
He is worth a flyer because $8,700, that's good value. But unfortunately, I put Beneil Dariush on both my teams. So I'm not going to go against myself both ways here, and I expect Dariush to get the finish on him.
Does he have the most value of any player on Countermove at $4,400?
Yeah, at $4,400, yes, because I really believe that he's going to get the finish. So if we're looking for someone who's going to finish in the first or second round, he might get it down in the first, second, or third. But I really have a sense that the rear naked choke's good for him. The body kick's good for him. He's got multiple ways to win this fight. When you're betting him at $10,700 on DraftKings,
he has to do that.
You're really banking on it. And if it doesn't happen, then you're thinking, oh man, maybe I screwed my team over. On Countermove, if it doesn't happen, he still gets the win or whatever the case is. It's okay.
Yeah, even if he wins by decision in 3 rounds, he's probably going to still earn more points per dollar spent than probably any other fighter that you can have.
Plus, if you get a guy like Beneil Dariush for $4,400 on your Countermove team, now that basically opens it up that you can have basically whoever else you want. You've taken a cheap player who's still good, and now, like, when I look at my Countermove team, it's like, okay, Jacare for $5,400. Okay, Corey Anderson for $5,000. That's expensive. And then Eddie Gordon, $5,400. So I just took 2 $5,400 players and a $5,000 player. Now I can take Beneil Dariush, $4,400.
Who saves you all that money back.
And I can now still take almost whoever I want. So I take Cub Swanson, who's only $4,500. I'm leaving $300 on the table, and I still got all the guys I wanted.
All right, amazing
to me.
The last of these flip-flopped odds fights, Patrick Cummins is $10,000 on DraftKings, only $4,500 on Countermove, and then his opponent, Vincent
St. Preux. We've talked about him as well before.
You can't pronounce your last name French if you don't pronounce your first name French. It can't be the English way and then the French way. That makes no sense.
Well, what would St. Preux be in English? St. Preux? What is that?
St. Preux.
St. Preux.
Yeah, it's like when you
no,
say
in French.
No,
in French
like
would be St. Preux.
Yeah.
St. Preux would be French, and then St. Preux would be English.
No, it wouldn't be.
So he's
Preux,
going
though.
by English here.
I don't know.
I think so.
It's like there's a place from where I'm from, and it should be St. Croix. Or it should be St. Croix, but they're just like, oh, it's St. Croix.
St. Croix.
That's how you pronounce it in English.
Well, you're from the out east, right? So the East Coast, they do things a tad bit different.
A little bit differently. So what's the deal here? This is almost a coin flip fight, minus 135 versus plus 105. But, I mean, again, like on Countermove, Cummings is 4,500. If he's going to win, then, like, you kind of have to have him, don't you?
He's a decent pick on Countermove. My only quarrel with this fight is that I don't really see it going to a finish target. It's going to go all 15, I believe. These guys are both like-minded wrestlers. Alvin St. Preux used to be a lineman at the University of Tennessee, so he's a natural athlete. Came into MMA a little bit later, so he's just been developing.
So he's learning how to fight, basically.
He's learning how to fight.
But he has all the athleticism that you would need to do it.
So now you got Pat Cummins, and Pat Cummins was a guy who he wrestled for Penn State. He was a walk-on at Penn State. He was an Olympic alternate, so wrestling down. But you want to talk about a 220-pound guy who's supremely athletic. Like, this guy can backflip, no problem. This guy, he does gymnastics as a way to get ready for his fights. I would argue that he's actually a better athlete than Alvin St. Preux. So he's a guy that also making strides in his own game. He actually made his UFC debut against Daniel Cormier, who recently fought John Jones, on a week's notice. And he was serving coffees before that. And they needed somebody, and they were like, who are we going to get? Well, why not get the world's toughest barista? And yes, he lost that fight, but he's won every single fight since then. He's making massive improvements. I see him winning here. But DraftKings has got him seriously overvalued. I don't think he gets the finish over St. Preux, a guy who's fought 5 rounds in his own career, so he's durable enough to go the distance.
Is this a double stay away on both sides?
Yeah, I mean, you could have Cummins for 4,500 on Countermove because of the value.
But we've already talked about better guys that are even cheaper.
But the fact that you can get most of the guys that you want, why not go for people who you really get a sense of a finish? With Cummins, you get a sense of he will win this fight, probably by decision.
Do you have any strong feelings either way on any of these undercard fights, which are not listed on DraftKings? They're on Countermove. Like, you have Means and Sullivan. You have Gordon and Dempsey. You said you like Gordon you wanted Gordon at 5,400?
Yeah, 5,400 was actually a tad bit pricey for me. But like I said, I got everything I wanted, and I left $300 on the table. So if I want Gordon, I'm going to take Gordon. The only knock on him is he's coming off his first real loss. I mean, he's lost 2 fights in his career, but he got knocked out in his last fight against Josh Salmon, who's a decent fighter in his own right. This guy won the Ultimate Fighter. Like we talked about ALJAMAIN Sterling and how ALJAMAIN Sterling trains with Chris Weidman, and they have that little super gym going. Eddie Gordon is part of that super gym. So he's got actually Gian Vellante, another one of his training partners, 3 guys from that gym on this card. So I think Eddie Truck Gordon will be one of the better guys coming out of that gym on this card, him and Sterling. I'm not big on Gian Vellante, but I think Eddie Truck Gordon knows he needs to get back in the win column. And against Chris Dempsey, a guy who made his UFC debut on short notice, got knocked out around 2 minutes into the first round, he's shown that
he has getting knocked out experience. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. So with Eddie Truck Gordon, I'm thinking if I'm Gordon, geez, I got to get back on the winning track here. I was winning my last fight before I got booted right in the head and got knocked out. I don't want to experience that anymore. I want to make a statement. And this is a big thing to me. You won the Ultimate Fighter. That should mean something.
Does it mean anything?
He's fighting on the undercard.
So it doesn't mean anything.
Apparently it doesn't. But if I'm him, I'm so upset that I'm going, you know what? I'm going to smash Chris Dempsey, and then we'll see where I end up next time. A good win here will move him up the card. So if I'm his gym, I'm telling him, go and finish this guy fast. And if that's the game plan, sign me up. I want him on my team.
Now, this would be a good time to plug. You guys are doing a reality competition. You and Paul on the Bookie Beatdown.
That's right. Took inspiration from you, actually.
Well, I mean, of course you did. I mean, if there's anyone who's going to create pools based on random reality shows, it's me.
Yeah.
Now you guys are stepping into. I'm going to have Paul on the show to kind of break it down a little bit. Now that you're doing the DFS stuff, he needs to do the reality stuff.
No, that sounds great.
That is Paul's corner when it comes to it. But explain a little bit what it is. Is it Tough Nation this time?
No, Tough Nation's
just Ultimate Fighter?
So this one's a little bit different. Tough Nations was Australia against Canada. Typically, they'll just do one coach versus another coach. This is the first time they're doing one gym versus another gym.
Okay.
So they're going to use...
so you can be from anywhere.
Normally, you can be from anywhere. This time, you have to be from American Top Team to be on the American Top Team.
Yeah, but I mean, from you could be on American Top Team and be from Holland.
Yeah, actually, there's guys from Brazil that are on American Top Team. It's same thing with the Black Zillions. The Black Zillions initially started because it was a bunch of black guys and Brazilians, so they were like, let's call ourselves the Black Zillions.
Very clever, some of these guys.
There's a lot of white guys there now, so I don't really know how it works. But yeah, absolutely, there's guys from kind of all over, mostly American and Brazilian. But you could be from any corner of the world and participate on one of those teams if you happen to be at that gym.
Lyoto Machida, Luke Rockhold. Do you want to take this fight either way?
No, I mean, Luke Rockhold's kind of expensive. When I looked at him, I wasn't quite feeling it. And it's a 5-rounder. I mention to you all the time that I like the fact that you have those extra 2 rounds to work with, but I don't know how I feel
But again, I always mention that when there's someone like me, I know who Lyoto Machida is.
Yes.
He's the Dragon, right?
The Dragon.
Like Ricky Steamboat.
Oof.
either way, I recognize the name. If I wasn't into daily fantasy like I am and understand value, and I was just a very casual player, I'd be like, oh, I know him, I'm getting him on my team. And there's that part of the public that just gravitates towards the main event card, and they're like, oh my God, 5 rounds, that's even better. But if this is going to go to a decision, that's not all that great.
No, you nailed it. Someone showed me the stats one time, and it was what percentage of teams had certain guys. And I remember it was like some guys that I wouldn't touch ever had 75% of the teams owned him. And I remember scratching my head and being like, this has got to be wrong. Something about this has to be wrong. But it wasn't. It's just quite simply people like that guy, or maybe they saw something else in that person. For this case here, it's like, I don't know. You know Lyoto Machida. You like Lyoto Machida. And Lyoto Machida does legitimately have a chance here. So he could go out there and he could get the win, and then you look genius. On the flip side, Luke Rockhold could go out and get the win and look genius. I like both these guys scoring points against other opponents. The only issue with them against each other is they're both very, I don't want to say tentative, but they're very respectful. They're very smart fighters, and they fight when they see openings. And neither guy really gives a whole lot of openings. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this fight is a trepid pace or if it's going to be very relaxed. Like, I'm not fully certain, and for that reason, I'm kind of avoiding it. Now, on the flip side to that, Lyoto Machida was good value on DraftKings, so at the same time...
9,500, you can squeeze in better guys
Exactly.
with him.
So like I mentioned, those extra 2 rounds, and for 9,500, if it goes 5 rounds and he just simply scores some points, he's better than some other guys that are around that 9,500 mark. So.
Very quickly, Anderson Vellante, you said you don't like Vellante?
No, I think Corey Anderson's going to run shop on him.
I like that his name is Gian, though. Like Gian Gomeshi. Maybe that should be his manager. That guy's doing nothing.
But yeah, and he's apparently got a winning record against terrible opponents. Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing with Corey Anderson. Worst nickname in the UFC as far as I'm concerned. Beastin?
Gian Gomeshi Vellante?
No, his opponent, Corey Anderson.
Oh.
He's Beastin 25-8.
Was that his online poker name?
Well, 25-8, you might ask yourself, what's 25-8? Because this guy doesn't go 24-7, Pat. 24-7 is for hacks. This guy's beasting 25-8.
Like Showron Glover. Also someone who beasts.
I couldn't come up with this if I tried.
That's terrible.
I know.
I'm telling you, we should get jobs as official nickname givers.
No, I'm serious. An app that you could just generate sweet nicknames, that would be it. I know they've tried this for they
did it with Situation.
Yeah.
Remember the Situation? What is your Jersey Shore name when Jersey Shore was a thing?
And I think they tried it for something else too. It was a stupid nickname, like a Sons of Anarchy nickname, or whatever it was.
I hate Sons of Anarchy.
Just bad acting. I know people like the show, but
of course, stupid people.
You know what? Someone actually informed me today to not take advice about TV shows from you. Apparently, you have terrible choice.
Who was it?
Do you want to know?
Yeah,
I think you do know. Your boss, one of your bosses.
Hey, who loves terrible shows like Ray Donovan?
Well, no, he said the same thing about you. He advised me to look at some shows, and I was like, oh, yeah, I normally just take my recommendations from Pat.
Have I ever steered you wrong on shows?
No, The Wire's pretty good.
It was really actually
good.
Like good shows, quality shows,
yeah.
not just fluff garbage. Ugh. Anyway.
Communists.
Well, I do like The Americans. That's another show people should be watching. Must-haves this week. So, Kountermove, DraftKings, who do you have to have on your team?
Well, Jacare Souza is the easy answer. You have to have him because it's very probable that he gets that first-round finish. And this is not a guy that I know we mention sometimes, maybe they'll play around with their opponent and try some new stuff.
No.
He doesn't have time for that. He's getting older in age. He wants a title shot, so he needs a definitive performance, and I think he comes out there and gets that win as soon as physically possible. So you have to assume him. Beneil Dariush, that's another guy that I really like. I think Beneil Dariush gets the finish. I like him by all means. I have no issue with that. And the price is not the end of the world. Now, like I mentioned for DraftKings, I have 2 different teams.
Okay.
Jacare on the one, Beneil Dariush on both. If I take Jacare on the first, I have Beneil Dariush. Now I can't really afford a whole lot. So it takes Max Holloway because he's cheap and there's good value.
You take out the grinders that could go the distance that are at the cheaper price.
Yeah, but what you notice is you're taking guys that you don't even think you're going to win. Max Holloway, I think he lasts, but I don't think he wins. Lyoto Machida, I think he lasts, but I don't think he wins. Takeo Mizugaki, I think he lasts, but I don't think he wins. So now I'm worried. It's like, oh man, I'd have to take 3 guys I'm not sold on just to get Jacare. Is that really worth it?
Is it worth it though?
Is it worth it?
Tell me your other team.
So now my other team, I'm thinking, okay, Jacare gets that first round finish. I'm at a disadvantage from all the teams that took Jacare.
But they're at a disadvantage because they have shitty guys on the team.
They got scrubs in the back end. And if their scrubs are just lasting, I could just get 2 or 3 guys that'll get finishes. I'll score more points. So my second team, Beneil Dariush, because I think he gets that finish.
Yep.
Now I'm able to take Corey Anderson, who I think beats John Vellante.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Anderson. Depends who's suing him at that present moment. But yes, Corey Anderson, I like him. Cub Swanson now. Cub Swanson, I know I'm going against my other team of Max Holloway, but
But you're playing multiple. This is why you play multiple lineups.
Exactly. So now that's 3 guys I'm going to win. And now, ironically enough, I still end up with Lyoto Machida and Takeo Mizugaki because they have good value. They're guys that I think are going to last, and I think that they're a little bit undervalued. So Mizugaki, I just need him to last to the 3 rounds. Even if he loses, he can last and score some points. And with Lyoto Machida, he's got 5 rounds to work with. And he'll probably be more competitive than Mizugaki is in his own fight. So I think he can score some decent amount, and for the price, I like it.
Countermove?
Okay, so now countermoves, like I mentioned already, you can have whoever you want. So I got Jacare at 5,400. We've got Eddie Gordon at 5,400. We've got Corey Anderson at 5,000. I'm almost thinking that's 3 finishes right there.
Okay.
But I'm going to throw Benin Dariush on there. Okay. That's a 4th finish, I think.
All right, give me a 5th.
And then I end up with Cub Swanson. And if you didn't want Cub Swanson, who's 4,500, you still got $300 on the table. So you can have up until $4,800, right?
And there's a lot of guys.
There's a lot of
good value of $4,800.
Absolutely is. There's no doubt in my mind there is. So countermove is a lot easier to configure a lineup together. DraftKings always more difficult, but at the same time, both super fun games to play. I like what they're doing, so I enjoy playing it.
Cody Saftik of the Bookie Beatdown. Follow him on Twitter at CJ Saftik. He'll be back next week to break down the pay-per-view.
Oh, the good stuff.
That should be fun. Big fights? I don't know who's on it.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, actually the Fox 15 card's pretty good. You know, the fight night cards, that's the lowest of the low. Then the Fox cards, they have to soup them up. And then the pay-per-view cards, they're really trying to make a push towards that. That being said, this Montreal pay-per-view is brutal. It's really, really
Are you going?
I was going to go, but the headliner, which was TJ Dillashaw, Henan Barao, that got strapped due to injury. Rampage Jackson, who was the co-main event, he got sued, so he's at his fight. Fabio Maldonado is now fighting a hockey enforcer from Montreal named Steve Bosse. It really escalated quickly, so I think I'm going to enjoy a cold beer and watch it from the confines of my house.
I can get behind that. Well, I mean, not for me, but for you. Friday night I'll be doing something. Saturday night?
Saturday, yeah. It's pay-per-view.
You're watching baseball or something like that.
Baseball?
Football research.
What if Jose Canseco came back to MMA?
Whoa!
That
would get me all back in.
Okay.
Don't worry about Jose. My guy, Jose.
All right.
They probably test for steroids, though. That would not be good for him.
He's got to fight Japan.
That's fine. I'll get that on a weird stream at a weird time, like 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. All right, Cody Saftik. Follow him at CJ Saftik on Twitter. Remember, Bookie Beatdown airs on the Fantasy Sports Network and Fight Network on Fridays. You can get it up on the Fight Network YouTube page and subscribe to the audio version on Podomatic as well. You can subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on iTunes and YouTube as well. And remember, follow me at the PME. That's going to do it. I'm Pat Mayo. We'll see you next time.